The death toll in the Mideast conflict has now topped more than 600. The majority of those killed are Palestinian, and it's wreaking havoc on communities in Gaza. For more on this, we're joined by CCTV's Callebs in the newsroom with more. Sean.
Elaine, days of aerial attacks and the ground war that started on Thursday have been brutal on Palestinian citizens. Hours ago, the United States announced a $47 million aid package to help tens of thousands of those affected. At the same time, international leaders are turning up the pressure on Hamas leaders in Gaza, urging them to agree to a ceasefire plan and open up negotiations in hopes of ending the fighting.
You're looking at video from the Israeli military, a massive detonation that destroyed a tunnel that Israeli forces contend Palestinians used to launch attacks. More than 2 weeks of violence rages on, with no end in sight, despite growing pleas from the international community to silence weapons on both sides and come to the negotiating table. Israel says it's willing to accept a ceasefire proposal from Egypt. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon are in the region, urging the Palestinians to agree to the plan. The UN chief saying his message is the same to both sides.
Stop fighting, start talking, and take on the root causes of the conflict so we are not back to the same situation in another 6 months or a year.
Hamas, the military wing of the Palestinians, is leery of leaders in Egypt and says it was not consulted on the pact. More than 600 Palestinians are dead and more than 3,500 wounded in the days of unrelenting Israeli attacks. Hamas says it will not give up its demands. It wants Israel to lift a punishing blockade on Gaza that has been in effect since 2007. And their leaders want Israel to release prisoners recently rounded up following the kidnapping and killing of 3 Israeli teens.
We must address these underlying issues, including mutual recognition, occupation, despair, and denial of dignity, so people do not feel they have to resort to violence as a means of expressing their grievances.
Israel, too, is digging its heels in, vowing to fight on as long as necessary. Israeli Defense Forces say they are doing what they can to limit civilian casualties. IDF tank shells slammed into a hospital in the heart of Gaza, killing at least 4 and wounding scores of others. Israel says its hand was forced, that Hamas was storing anti-tank missiles in the shadow of the hospital.
For Palestinians in Gaza, it has been weeks of heartbreak. More than 100,000 people are now homeless, with legions trying to find some safe haven with only the clothes on their back. The U.S. is indicating that it will examine Hamas claims, but only once a ceasefire agreement is approved. Elaine?
And Sean, there have been a couple of opportunities, but why won't Hamas agree to a ceasefire?
Well, I think if you look at the situation as a whole, they're pushing back on the blockade to the east and the north by Israel, to the south by Egypt. This has been going on since 2006, 2007. It has been punishing to the people inside that little strip of land. Businesses have been failing. It's very difficult to get any kind of fresh food into that area. This is something that they are adamant about. And secondly, it comes back to let's go get the usual suspects. After the 3 Israeli teens were kidnapped and eventually murdered, there was a big roundup of a number of Palestinians that became prisoners. Hamas in the Gaza area is speaking for the Palestinian people. They say they want those prisoners freed, and they say that will continue this fight, even though right now the odds simply look overwhelming.